Trump is using the murder of Charlie Kirk to crack down on free speech and political dissent. The latest is an effort by Project 2025 backers Heritage Foundation and Oversight Project. They are asking the FBI to designate transgender ideology as a domestic terror organization. This is in addition to Trump just labeling Antifa as a domestic terror organization, despite the fact that it's not even lawful for him to do it because of the First Amendment. Let's get into this. My name is Dina Doll, and this is the MeidasTouch Network. This is what he had to say, Trump had to say about Antifa. This has already happened in a statement. He labeled it as a domestic terror organization. He said, quote, "I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designated Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practice." The problem is that we do not have a designation of a domestic terror organization. We, of course, have foreign terror organizations. The Supreme Court has ruled in 2010 with Chief Justice Roberts writing the opinion that the U.S. cannot have it unconstitutional to be able to donate to or be associated with a domestic organization, that label only applies to foreign. Clearly, this is illegal under the Supreme Court precedent. If they indeed keep to the precedent, we've seen quite a bit the Supreme Court change their tune when it comes to Trump. But the bottom line is Trump is just using the murder of Charlie Kirk in order to go after people he doesn't like. Antifa, as we know, is not even like an actual organization. It's more of an ideology, which makes it, frankly, worse for those of us who have opinions that differ to Trump, because it's, how do you know if somebody's a member of Antifa? It's not like they have a registry. It's not like they have a roll list. This is something that is about quelling, tamping down, prohibiting somebody's free speech and association. And that is our First Amendment protected rights. We have a right to an association in this country. We have a right to be member of an organization, and we have a right for free speech. How the government handles neo-Nazis and other organizations, they do in fact need to take into account and make sure that they obey the law. They instead designate them as criminal enterprises and go after the actual crimes they commit. This is very different than what Trump is doing, essentially going after a belief or an association. And we know how Trump and his allies in Project 2025 work. They plan on casting a wide net, which is why it's very dangerous. This new latest Oversight Project is part of the Heritage Foundation Project 2025. And they have specifically are asking the FBI to designate a new domestic terrorist organization. They are calling it the Transgender Ideology Inspired Violent Extremism, called TIVE. Now, let's just break this down. I mean, we know that even before this, Trump and MAGA have been trying to talk about the fact that somehow transgender is why we have mass shootings. We know this not to be the case. The facts are it only is 0.1%, but because they like to attack transgender people in general, we have seen this, of course, in relation to how schools talk about the issue, athletes talk about the issue. So they have also now assigned this to shootings. Whether or not the shooter actually is even a part of the transgender ideology still remains to be seen, as we saw lots of shifting narratives. The Wall Street Journal first talking about it being on the bullet and then having to backtrack, them saying he was transgender, then having to backtrack. Now they're saying the roommate is, which, still all has to be proven in court. Regardless of that fact, this group is asking not only somebody who identifies as transgender to be labeled as a part of this violent extremist group, which in itself is so disturbing. You're talking about a tiny portion of our country, and you're talking about the most vulnerable, because many people do not know somebody who's transgender. It is very easy to other them. It is very easy to say they should be subject to crime because somebody doesn't feel a connection to that person. But in addition to just that person, it is people who are supporting transgender. It is people who are talking about transgender rights. It is people like me. It is people like you. Let me read what it has to say. So they define it. Transgender ideology. This is what they're talking about. Should be a violent extremist group. Is a belief that wholly or partially rejects fundamental science about human sex being biologically determined before birth, binary and immutable. Transgender ideology inspired violence and extremism. TIVE. This threat encompasses the potentially unlawful use or threat of force or violence, including incitement to unlawful violence, in furtherance of ideological agendas derived from transgender ideology and related beliefs, including the belief that violence is justified against people who oppose TI, who decline to support or affirm TI, or who are silent or indifferent, to the belief that opposing TI, declining to support or affirm TI, or remaining silent or indifferent regarding TI and self constitute a form of violence toward people who identify as any variant, and it is a true threat to the existence of such persons or poses an imminent threat to such persons' emotional, psychological, or physical safety, including through self-harm or suicide. That last part, they are not talking about somebody who believes in transgender or is transgender somehow inciting violence. That is already a crime. It is not protected free speech to incite violence. They are talking about the belief that if you oppose transgender ideology, which when a Republican wants to ban affirming care to allow them to transition, that poses a threat to that child or adult, whoever's trying to transition. It poses a threat to their emotions because you are not allowing them the medical care that they and their doctor think they should have. According to this oversight project, they are urging the FBI to make this unlawful. That belief that the effect that the Republicans' actions are taking to a transgender person affects their beliefs, that should be now part of this ideology that is an extremist threat. And if you think that this is just vague enough and it can be interpreted any way, they even gave specific terminology used by TIVE. And one of the terminologies is, quote, right to exist. So if you use the word right to exist, if individuals motivated by this, TIVE routinely uses the phrase right to exist or erased in online forums and at protests. And this is part of the terminology they say is part of this extremist group. So really, and misgendering. They say misgendering is another term that should not be, that is part of this extremist threat. So they are using everyday terms that people who understand this space talk about these issues, these very important issues. They are using those specific terms as part of this violent extremist group. So again, it's not just targeting somebody who's actually trying to transition or identifying it, but it is talking about the allies of transgender people. It is talking about people who are discussing this in their space. And they're saying those terms should be seen as part of this extremist group. Really scary stuff coming out of this project oversight, this Heritage Foundation behind Project 2025, urging the FBI to designate this TIVE as a domestic terrorist threat, giving them more ammunition to go after them. Again, they already have the ability to prosecute anybody for a crime. You can be prosecuted for incitement to violence. You can be prosecuted for actual crimes. But this isn't about actual crimes. This is about talking in a way they don't like. This is about going after people who have a different point of view. And that's why here in MeidasTouch, we are calling this out. We will stay on top of this story. Not only Trump, but Trump's backers here to try to change, frankly, how we participate in our democracy.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.